Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. A 6-year-old was raped by a skating instructor in a Bangalore school. That's just the beginning of the problem. The school has been subsequently accused of negligence, guilty of negligence. It was trying to hush up the case, and there was a failure to provide CCTV footage. All in all, reflecting a certain disregard for the process and the system, and of course the very nature of schooling and the students themselves. The question that we are asking, however, today is, are people, are entrepreneurs, are businessmen treating schools like just any other business, and therefore all the other problems that we just talked about come into play? Joining me to discuss that, Dilip Thakore, editor of Education World, joins us from Bangalore. Khanna, chairman of iWatch Foundation, right here with me in Mumbai, and Dhanya Rajendran from newsminute.com, who's been tracking this case right from the beginning. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Before I come to you, Dhanya, just take us through what has happened very briefly in this case so far.
Well, there's a lot of outrage regarding the case in Bangalore. Now, as everyone knows, the complaint was given a week later by the parents after the rape actually took place, because the child did not tell the parents. And once the complaint was registered, there was a lot of shock and disbelief, especially as it was a skating instructor from the school who had committed the act of rape. At first, it was known that it was a teacher in the school, some sort of an instructor, though people did not exactly know the identity of the person. After the skating instructor was arrested by the police, there was still a concern about what role did the school play. As in the FIR, the parents have mentioned that the school did play a role in somehow camouflaging the crime, in hiding the crime, which is why the school's chairman was arrested yesterday. He's out on bail now. But Bangaloreans are sort of demanding a lot of measures to be put in place in school. I personally believe some of them are legitimate, but some are just results of mindless outrage. I think there's also a Bandh call in the city of Bangalore on July 31st.
Right, so we'll come to that. Subsequently, the chairman of the school, Vibgyor International, Rustam Kerawala, has been arrested while he was on the run, and also is likely to face prosecution under the Protection of Children of Sexual Offences Act, which pretty much makes everyone in the school liable. So that's really where the case is. Now let's try and understand what is at play here, and is there something fundamentally wrong in the way schools are being built, or not the physical structure of course, and being run, which we should be concerned about. Dilip Thakore, let's begin with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't think actually, of course this is outrageous what's happened, and there is evidence of negligence on the part of the management, but I don't think it would be correct to say that all private schools are negligent or they treat it merely as a business. Actually running a private school today in India is a pretty difficult business, because there are all kinds of rules and regulations, bewilderingly complex rules and regulations, which are difficult to comply with. Having said that, it doesn't mean that certain basic norms of checking the backgrounds of teachers, perhaps, and taking some elementary precautions is necessary. So
right.
I think in this particular case,
right,
the time lag is condemnable actually.
Okay. I'm going to come to Dhanya as well on this. Khanna, how do you see this? I mean, is there
I think the problem is started many years ago. I mean, after independence, we really haven't put our house in order as far as education is concerned. For example, human development starts from the age of 1. And in most developed countries, especially where I have lived for many years, Germany and Japan and the European Union, the best teachers are really in pre-primary school, because 90% of the human brain is developed by the age of 6, and human values, the soft skills, what we call, and the human values, they are inculcated to the children at an age between 2 and 6. Now, pre-primary education is really missing in India. I mean, it's there for the elite, but it's not for the common man.
Okay.
So the value system itself is in
so that's
jeopardy.
a larger problem, right?
No, so you see, we're not putting our house in order. So these little things, these instances, I think will continue because
and because what? The wrong kind of people have stepped in to fill the gap.
You see, because just like governance was a business, education is a business today. And there's a huge shortage. I mean, you can see it from the way parents have to go for admission of their young ones. When they are born, they go for admission. So there is a big, I would say, pressure, and we need many more schools, because only competition can clean out this mess.
No, but the question we are asking is, are the wrong kind of people getting into this? Because as you say, I mean, I think what you've pointed out rightly is the demand-supply gap. So are the wrong kind of people filling the supply gap?
As Dilip has very correctly mentioned, there are good people and the ones who are not so good. And the question is, there are so many controls, with the result that unless you want to go through that plethora of the paperwork, which common people find it very complex, and there's a lot of corruption. So what happens is, many people, good people, drop out, and then naturally the not so good people get in.
Right.
So we need to simplify the laws. We need to make them more transparent.
Right. Right. So, Dhanya, let's understand this. Okay, we've obviously seen a lot of insensitivity. Take us through that part. I mean, the way the school reacted. Clearly that's caused the greater outrage in some ways, in addition to the initial outrage about the act itself.
Well, it's not just the school. In India, I think most schools, most teachers and policemen, and in fact parents also, do not know how to deal with child sexual abuse, and that's exactly what has happened here. People have no clue when a child is abused. They do not encourage the child to disclose when there is child sexual abuse, and when it's disclosed, most parents do not know what to do, most teachers do not know what to do, they panic. In this case, we do not know if the school was involved in some sort of criminal negligence, because the parents do say that the child was taken to a room and she was cleaned up. Now, this has to be proved by the police in an investigation. But the larger point remains that we are sort of unaware when it comes to child sexual act, when it comes to child sexual abuse, and the various legislations around child sexual abuse. In fact, even in the police station, most of the police officers do not know that they have to be accompanied by a social worker or a psychologist while interviewing the child. All these things are not done, and that's when most investigations are getting botched up. In fact, even in this case, why did the outrage grow? The outrage grew because there were more and more news reports about the police insensitivity, about the school's insensitivity. I think it's time that more than outraging, people really come together and they figure out how to deal with the issue of child sexual abuse. It's very much there in our schools. No matter how much background checks you do, a child sexual abuser is not walking with a board on his head saying, I am a child sexual abuser. In this case, yes, there was a negligence because this man has been thrown out of a previous school for some sort of a gross misconduct. That school doesn't give a police complaint. Why? Again, because we have this thing that if it's a child sexual abuse, just put it under the carpet, do not report it. That school didn't complain about him. He gets another job. He comes to a different school. So they should have.
Dhanya, if I can interrupt there, I mean, and that's the question I'm also trying to ask. So why is it that the school did not report this? Why is it that the school did not take cognizance of the person's track record? Is that the fundamental problem here, and is that something that we should be addressing? And is that somewhere linked to the fact that this is just like any other business?
Who are you addressing the question to?
Yeah, to you, Dhanya.
Okay. Can you just repeat it?
No. So the question was really, I'm saying, I think you pointed out what happened. My question is really, why did the school not pay attention to the track record of this individual? Why did they not, the previous school reported? And therefore, is that the larger problem here, that because it's become like a flourishing business, all kinds of standards are sort of sacrificed or have become lax?
Obviously, yes. See, in this case, there was a school in Whitefield in Bangalore where this person has worked before and has been thrown out for gross misconduct. And the school simply says, this person has been thrown out for gross misconduct. Please don't remain in touch with him. Now, we do not know whether the second school has contacted the first school while taking him in. But there is one very different aspect in this. Now, this Rustam Kherapala, who's running these chains of schools in Pune, Bombay and Bangalore, he also runs a sports company called Olympic Sports and Events. Now, he was outsourcing most of these instructors from his own sports company. So, obviously, he was just recruiting people for the gym, for his own sports company without any sort of background verification, without even taking into consideration that some of these gym instructors working in a sports company are going to work also in a school. So, there is definitely negligence on his part, and it may even amount to criminal negligence. But the larger point is, how do we have a registry in this country where we know that, look, there is somebody with a history of child sexual abuse? A lot of activists say that you cannot have a registry in India because it will not work. But I think we should start working towards that, at least within cities, within towns, to maintain a record of such people.
Right. Okay. Dilip Thakore, let me come back to you. So there are 2 or 3 types, possible scenarios here. One is that the school is genuinely insensitive or unaware of the finer points of keeping track of employees' antecedents and making a register out of it and all of that. The second is that it knows it has to do it but didn't do it. And the third is that it just doesn't care, one way or the other, because it's just a staff position that has to be filled. How are you seeing this from your vantage point?
Well, actually, first, I think that you have to see all this against the background that there's an acute shortage of teachers in India. In fact, some estimates indicate there 1 million shortage of teachers, out of the total 5 million that you have. That's a 20% shortage. So it's very difficult to find teachers. But on the thing of maintaining background checks, it's not only the duty of the school. I think the police also should maintain a record of all people working in schools. I don't think that's very difficult in this digital age. If you take a census you maintain a register, it can be kept in the police station also. So I think this is a shared responsibility. And I think it's not correct to say that, schools don't care. I think the amount of care and persistence in trying to maintain some standards that are taken in schools today is like way ahead of what it used to be some years ago. And certainly in private schools, the standards of care, duty of care is much higher than in government schools where corporal punishment and all, as you might have seen in that Andhra case recently, it's something astonishing. It's de rigueur, it's routine.
No, but that's clearly a generalization.
No, I don't think it's a general. It's not in my opinion, because I've studied this for a long time. And if you want evidence of that, there's a huge flight out of even the poorest households. They want to get out of government schools and go to private schools, despite the government schools providing free lunch and free uniforms.
Okay.
But that is the idea. We have private.
Dilip and Dhanya, let me interrupt you there for a second. I think.
Sure.
I just want to butt in, Dilip.
Yeah.
There is a huge problem of governance. Basically, what Dilip is saying and Dhanya is saying, the underlying problem is governance. In the government schools today, the salaries have shot up. I can tell you hundreds of instances where the teachers in the government schools
earn more than the
are
private
getting
schools,
3 to 5 times more.
Okay.
And but they don't come to school. They're doing private business because there's no governance, there's no accountability. And what Dilip said about private schools is correct. Although the government schools are free, even the poorest of the poor.
No, I think, but the question we are asking is, are the private schools better managed? Are they more concerned about things
but there's
like
a
this?
huge shortage. You see, the question is this: we are producing 29 million people per year, and 10 million die. So the population may be going up by 18, 19 million, but 29 million are young people coming into the system every year.
Right.
Now we really, education has been really not given the priority. Today, as somebody just now said, there is a huge shortage of teachers. Today accountants are feared, lawyers are feared, doctors are feared. People are afraid of them because their lives depend upon them. But teachers, as a profession, is not given the respect it used to have 30, 40, 50 years ago. People really don't want to become teachers. It's very difficult to find teachers.
Okay. So you're saying, and that's why there are people with all kinds of backgrounds getting into the profession?
Yeah, that is what is happening. So whoever comes, they just catch him and put him and say, okay, now you start, taking charge of this school or this class or this subject. So I think because teaching as a...
So, but that in some ways, to the larger question, which is that is schools in India, have they become like any other business? The answer then seems to be yes.
The answer is yes. And actually the only way to solve is to have more schools, to allow more people to get into the school system. And the government actually really has failed, in terms of school education.
Okay.
So that's why the private schools are coming in a big way, because the government schools, the quality is so dismal.
Right. No, but are you saying that this is a private school versus government school problem?
No, this is
Not
both
so
the
much.
problems.
Yeah.
You see, one is this, that if the private schools hadn't been there, the problem would have been much bigger.
Okay.
Let me put it very bluntly.
Okay.
So the private schools have filled up a very big gap. But the question is, we have to continue. We have to either privatize the government schools, and this government school should be handed over to the local community. You can't have say in Maharashtra, there are 110,000 schools. You can't have them reporting to the Mantralaya. The local community there, the local panchayat.
And this model has been talked about.
Yeah,
in
but
many
it's not being, it needs to be implemented now.
Right.
Time
So you're saying if the community, for instance, had a control over the school, they would also obviously ensure that the quality of teachers and the parents would come.
Yeah, they
but
would.
Then how do you do that in a private school?
Well, the private school also, the parent-teacher relationship is the same. The parents have to get involved in the running of the school.
Okay, Dilip, is that also a sort of area which perhaps I know that obviously parents do pay a lot of attention, but should parents then be involved even more finely in establishing the antecedents of teachers, at least asking the questions and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think a very big lacuna in private education is that there aren't strong parent-teachers associations. If you look at the American experience, it's like normative for all schools to have strong parent-teachers associations.
Right.
And they're actively involved in the school, and the management reports to the parents.
Right.
So that's one way of maintaining quality, and in this particular school, it might be of interest for you to learn that actually there isn't a PTA there. So I think that's one lacuna that needs to be filled in immediately. And I also have some words of advice for parents. It's not good enough just to send your kids to school and then have a hands-off policy. Exactly. I always say, in our magazine anyway, we say, education begins at the dinner table also. And it's very important that the efforts of school teachers and managements are supplemented at home, and parents have to be involved. That's one of the fundamental duties of parenthood, that you have to be involved with the school to which your child goes. It's no use just sending on, then when something goes wrong you suddenly turn around and blame the management. It's also partly your fault. You must have a strong PTA.
Right. So be that as it may, Danya, let me come back to you. So yes, parents need to be more involved. Yes, we need to have a situation where communities, when it comes to government schools, are more involved. But is there, in the way you've covered this case so far and what you've seen of the way the school has behaved, is there something more fundamental that needs to be addressed, which perhaps will not be able to be resolved by the steps that we've been talking about?
Well, one thing which I've noticed in this school's case is that the layers of business. Now, like everyone else here is saying, there should be more private schools, there should be more schools introduced. I'm completely for that. Okay, you introduce more schools. But look at the specific schools example. This man was also running a sports company from which he was taking people. Right. And because of the shortage, perhaps even for instructors, he was just taking anyone from the road, I guess, as instructors without any kind of background check. So that's where the conflict of interest is. You run a school as a business, you run a parallel business, then you mix all these businesses, and then you just put your hands up and say, sorry, I'm not responsible, the parents should have known better. I'm sorry, if you have it, this is a big problem in our country. Politicians run schools, businessmen who are hoteliers, who are doing other stuff, they also start running schools, and they do not understand the system of education. So if you are going to have more private schools, privatize education more, then make sure it goes to people who understand that specific business. That is not being understood here.
Right, okay, or at least be sensitive to it. Yes, Krishnan.
Yeah, there is one very big fundamental aspect. As I said, kindergarten is one. The other thing is skill building. In other parts of the world, you cannot become an instructor or a teacher unless you passed a certain examination for skills that you have been trained as a teacher.
Right.
And unless you have that certification, which is of a national level, it can't be issued by any Tom, Dick and Harry.
Yeah.
So what happens? Anybody gets in.
Yeah.
So that whole skill building exercise, where nearly 80-90% of the population is going through skill building. Here we are preparing the youth for university education.
Okay.
So the whole system of education needs to be looked at.
Right.
Right from skill building, primary, pre-primary education, teachers training, certification,
granted,
all that.
Right, granted, but
and opening up more schools, because there is too much of today. Everybody is running for admissions.
Right, but the
admission
question
is a big subject today.
So the question, but here is who is going to run those schools, and can we manage that? Because I think one of the problems with this case is that the promoter of the school himself seems to be. The fact that he went absconding is in itself some
He's
sort
guilty.
of
He's
admission of guilt.
Right,
and therefore raises questions about the nature of the people who should be running businesses like this.
That's it. No? So they need you need people with certain prerequisite, background before they can get into this system.
Yeah.
I mean, in the good old days, or in many cases, people with money, whether they are builders or halwais, or just because they've got cash and they can buy land and building, they've gone into all these areas, which is really not the right thing.
Right. Okay. So, if we were to now take this forward, Dilip, let me begin with you. What's the
Can I just add a word?
Yeah.
As a business journalist, perhaps you should understand that license permit quota Raj has migrated into education.
Right.
And the reason, and because of that, genuine education is found very difficult. People who don't know the ropes, who can't bribe people and so on, they find it very difficult to get into education or to promote schools. Therefore, a vacuum has been created, and therefore a large number, I'm not saying in this particular instance, but a large number of, as he said, as Krishnan said, politicians and others and unsavory characters have entered into education. So I think one of the things is that we have to ensure that license permit quota Raj, which has migrated into education, should also be disbanded, so that genuine educationists can go and start schools easily, which is not the case today.
Right. Okay. So, and Dilip, can I ask you? I mean, if you were to sort of suggest one or two points as a way to create first disband and then create a structure which allows for the entry of educationists, how would we do it?
Well, firstly, you have to get rid of all these no objection certificates, then Inspector Raj. And today, for example, you want to start a school in Karnataka, it's very difficult, It'll take you at least 6 to 8 months to get the paperwork done. Or I'm sure it's the same in other states.
Right.
So really, you have to, the same principles that you applied to industry, you have to do the same thing here. And you have to, as Krishnan says, you have to allow more schools. Ultimately, competition is going to chase out the bad people who are in education, because no one will go to those schools. Right now, all this is happening. In this particular case, now even the parents say that we don't want the school to close down, because there's no other option really, because there's such a severe shortage of schools.
Right, but so there is a longer term solution, which you say is that obviously increase supply and so on, but there is a shorter to medium term problem as well, which is the anxiety of a parent who sends a student or a child to school. And how does that get addressed, Dilip? Because we need solutions to fix that too.
Yes, of course you do. I think the first thing is the police should keep a register of all people employed in the school. I think that's very important.
A teacher and parents should ask for the list of the teachers and their specification, their educational qualifications, background, experience, and all. Teachers have, parents have to take interest. If they don't take interest, just throw the kids into the school and just go and pick them up.
And that list should be filed in the police station.
Okay, Dhanya, is this a suggestion?
No, it should be on their website. It should be on the website of the school. All the teachers, their qualifications, their background, and all that. It should be an open book. One shouldn't ask for it.
More than all this, because this case is about child sexual abuse. Yes, maybe the registry and everything is needed, but we should also talk about the core issue here about child sexual abuse, and schools have to start talking about it. Schools and police have to sensitize parents and teachers.
Right. Absolutely.
So, Dhanya, what in your mind, as a parent as well as someone who's been following this case, needs to be done? I mean, what is the kind of what is the way a school should be best introducing this subject, and how should it be taken forward?
The first is to tell parents what the myths are. For example, when the Bangalore story first broke out, a lot of people asked, like for us on the News Minute, how come the parents knew it only after 1 week? Why did the mother not notice the injuries? That's myth number one. 2/3 of children who are abused in this world do not have injuries. In fact, there are studies in America which clearly show that most child sexual abuse victims do not have any sort of injuries, and parents and caretakers may not know it forever if the child does not talk about it. All these myths have to be addressed. Parents have to be told that, look, this is a reality. Right. Your child can be sexually abused. You have to encourage your child to speak to you. Disclosure is very important. You got to tell the child, to tell the parent if something wrong happens. And the parent has to be sensitized to accept if the child discloses that she or he has been sexually abused. I think we have to work from the basics here.
So that's one part.
And our teachers to be sensitive.
And also introduce sex education in schools, which is a subject which is a hanging fire for the last I don't know how many years.
Exactly.
And also you see now what has happened, the husband and wife are both working. So what happens, I do not know how much time they really spend for the kids.
Okay.
I mean, in the good old days, the mother really used to spend a lot of time with the kids. When the kids came home, the mother used to ask, what happened? What did the teacher tell you? What did you learn? What's your homework? What do you want to do for tomorrow? I don't know if many parents are spending all that time even. They may buy them expensive toys and expensive gadgets, but whether they're really interacting with the...
And you're saying asking them about what happened in school and whether they
anything was good, bad, whether they're happy, unhappy, spending time with the kids. I think that's where I think a lot of young couples are missing out.
Okay.
I mean, they're making a lot of money. The bank balances are going up. They may have better cars, better homes. But is there happiness in the family because of this? Are they interacting with the kids?
Right.
I think there's a big question mark.
Right. Okay. So as we sum up now, let's try and understand where this problem needs to be addressed and tackled. So first is at the very local specific level, which is that schools need to obviously maintain registers, and the names have to be ideally, as Krishnan says, in public domain. There should be parents should be playing a role in asking for those details from schools and asking if there has been a police check where that is possible or feasible. The third is, of course, to say that the larger issue, which is that there needs to be more supply, and thus if there is supply, hopefully the supply will take care of the quality and improve the quality. Have I got that right, Krishnan?
Yeah, I just want to end with one point.
Yeah.
You see, in 1947 we got our political freedom.
Yeah.
In 91 we got our economic freedom.
Yeah.
Intellectual freedom we haven't got. As Dilip said, there are too many controls, and that controls get worse as you go up for higher education and all that.
Right, exactly. So as Dilip says,
all that has to be
free up the
opened up,
thing. Yeah. So the license Raj, which has migrated to education, should be removed forthwith. As it's been removed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, simplified. Dhanya, last point.
Well, the last point that has to be learned from the Bangalore incident is no point in pointless outrage.
Okay.
You have to talk about solutions. I don't think there's any point in everybody coming to the streets. You're just making one instructor get arrested. You're not gaining anything from that. You have to address the issue.
Okay, thank you. Dilip?
Yeah, I think this has been like a wake-up call for people. I think we must have stronger, all schools must establish parent-teacher associations. Police must register all the names of the local police station should have a list of all teachers employed in all schools in the area of jurisdiction. That's a good start to do. And of course you must introduce sex education in schools. I don't think that's one issue which I feel strongly about. It can't be delayed any longer, and the new government which has come in seems to be wholly averse to that idea. So I think we need to educate the government also.
Right, fine, and that's I think we've covered fair ground there. Thank you very much, Dilip, for pointing out some of the structural problems in the education side, and creating precondition to bring in more educationists as opposed to businessmen who clearly may play fast and loose. Dhanya, thank you for sharing your experiences and from the ground, and Krishnan, thank you for giving us the larger picture.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. That's all we have time for on the Hangout today. We'll be back tomorrow.